Welcome to Sweden Innovation Days 2022. And if you just tuned in, this is day 3 of a 4-day innovation marathon. Yet another innovation conference, you yawn. But don't be fooled by the buzzwords. We've set ourselves the daunting task to innovate how we innovate. Why? It's escaped no one that we're facing unprecedented challenges and transformations. You might feel slightly overwhelmed by digitalization, climate and biodiversity collapse, a COVID pandemic, antibiotics resistance, and avalanching child obesity, just to mention a few. Yet the inconvenient truth is, we knew. We saw it coming. We actually quite accurately have been able to predict most of this. And we knew how to prevent it. But we didn't. If you listened in on Monday and Tuesday, you'd agree with me that the underlying point that we discussed in many of the complex realities was that we're still suggesting and acting in similar courses of action. And it's time to do things differently. Because we can't afford to blame our processes. We need to take responsibility and reinvent them. And that is easier said than done, but that will be the theme of the day. And as Vinnova's Dan Hill, the head of strategic design, pointed out, the delta between where we say that we should be, ought to be, and where we are is worrying. So even though the last 2 days have been both very inspiring, energizing, as we've met thinkers and doers showcasing impressive initiatives and a clarity of analysis, the Sweden Innovation Days is not a self-congratulatory innovation show and tell, but an honest, ambitious, and humble contribution to addressing the current predicaments. My name is Aurora Balfrog. I'm a technology investor, economist, and a worried mother. And I'm very excited to introduce today's co-moderator, not just because he's lovely and brilliant, but because he spends his day working on just this, which gives me hope. Joachim Skog, who is Strategic Area Lead Future Innovations at Vinnova, Sweden's innovation agency. Welcome, Joachim.
Thank you very much, Aurora. Excited to be here.
Joachim, tell us, what is your top-line reflection on today's theme, co-creation for innovation, and our expectations?
Co-creation for innovation, that is not a buzzword, that's a necessity. We need that. I thrive for that. We need all the perspectives and we need everyone on board to make this happen. We need to make this change happen, and we're in a hurry.
So what are your expectations for today? What can we achieve in the next few hours to help you in your daily work?
Oh, I mean, we have a buffet of interesting keynotes ahead of us. I must say that I'm really looking forward to the last one. Stay tuned, the UNICEF one, getting the young perspectives into this, because they know so much and they are kind of neglected. So listening to that keynote is really something I'm looking forward to. But hard to pick a winner. I'm excited about every keynote today and everything we're going to do here.
And one of the things that we were discussing both on Monday and Tuesday is why is it important to meet like this and discuss these topics?
From my perspective, working with futures thinking, strategic foresight, we need to get better at visualizing and envisioning the future ahead of us. And if we just miss out one perspective in the work that leads up to these scenarios, we're in trouble. So it's super important that we get all the different, we need the organizations, we need industry, academia, civil society, the kids, the old people, and what else to do? We need to meet up. We need to gather around the table and discuss these things and get all the perspectives in there.
I was just thinking about yesterday and Monday, and I felt we were talking about perspective density, that we need a lot of perspectives. And then we translated that to, it was also emotionally dense with a lot of conflicting emotions. And I felt several times this sense of high five and Kafka and Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, I know you don't know the answer, but could you reflect a little on why is it so hard to do the right thing? Like, why aren't we changing in the pace that we know that we should do?
Yeah, well, for one thing, we already talked about this, that we need to innovate how to innovate. We realize that we have a toolbox that's not sufficient given the challenges we have ahead. So one thing that we haven't explored enough is utilizing our feelings, our emotions. How can we use our emotions in a proactive and creative way to actually make a change? We need to change our behaviors. We don't only need technology to solve these challenges. We really need to understand what kind of future we want through our own feelings and get that experience in the mix. So that's, yeah.
Well, you brought it up, feelings.
Okay.
So let's look at the range of feelings here, and we were alluding to it as well. There's the realm of positive, constructive hope, a feeling of progress that is motivating. And then on the other end of the spectrum, and there's lots in between, is maybe fear and a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And how do you balance that?
One thing, I mean, we're all individuals and we all have our different drivers. Some are driven by fear, so let's not avoid that. We need to work with the dystopic scenarios as well. Some find more energy in hope. We need both. We need to handle both emotions and everything in between. So what's the balance? Well, we should not avoid anything. Of course, it could be, we don't want people to get, I mean, we know that mental health issues are at large driven by the climate crisis and what can I do? But we can also provide hope to those that doesn't know what to do, that there is something you can do. You're part of creating the future. The future is nothing that happens to you. You can actually do something about it. So there's hope to like balance up that part that's more dystopic and whatever can I do.
Yeah, and the sub-layer, the next layer of the onion of this conversation is the reprioritizing the objectives, and that was also a topic that we had on Monday. And I think it was Rowan Conway who was talking about. We need to start with the why. Why are we doing this transformation? Why is it important? What does the worst case scenario look like? And then some sort of secondary priority will be optimizing for a return on investment, which is kind of linked to the emotion there of positive and opportunity. And rebalancing that as part of this innovation of innovation.
Innovate how to innovate.
Innovate how to innovate. And reprioritizing. How do you feel about that?
That's an interesting take on it. Yes, I mean, how to prioritize. We know we're in a hurry, right? So we need to identify what's the acupuncture point here, where to start. We need to get. That's one thing also that we talk a lot about. For instance, in mission-oriented innovation, which Dan Hill talked about. That getting the common idea of where to start and get that prioritization done together is critical. We cannot have organizations and individuals running around in all directions. Everybody wants to do good, but let's focus our efforts in the right way. And that's done by meeting up around the table or the virtual table and agreeing about where to start.
So we have now thrown up lots of questions in the air, and hopefully we'll take the next few hours to address some of them, looking at both from a government perspective and emotional perspective on co-collaboration. We'll look at it from a corporate view, from a startup point of view, from an inclusion point of view, and just as you said, from a children's point of view. So hopefully the next 3 hours will be both energizing and inspiring, two big words for today. And let's kick off with the government perspective. Because the building blocks of co-creation are core to Swedish values: equality, diversity, and inclusiveness. So I'd love to introduce Stina Billinger, State Secretary to Minister for Business, Industry and Innovation. And let's hear how the Swedish government is aligned and dedicated to the goal of a fossil-free welfare state, and how the power of co-creation is at the heart of everything. Stage is yours, Stina.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to welcome you to the third day of the Swedish Innovation Days 2022, a day dedicated to the important topic of co-creation for innovation. My name is Stina Billinger, and I'm the State Secretary to the Minister for Business, Industry and Innovation in Sweden. Co-creation for innovation is a topic close to my heart. Co-creation, collaboration and inclusiveness are indeed pillars of the Swedish innovation system. In Sweden, we have a long history of developing groundbreaking innovations through collaboration between companies, public sector, academia and of course civil society. Today, more than ever, collaboration across nation and sectorial borders is necessary to face challenges and to build resilient, sustainable societies. That is why I'm pleased that Vinnova, the Swedish Innovation Agency, is organizing the Swedish Innovation Days together with friends and partners from all around the world. Sweden has the goal of becoming the world's first fossil-free welfare state. To make this a reality, the Swedish government has initiated a number of initiatives with co-creation approach. Sweden has also entered strategic innovation partnerships with Germany, France and India, with a strong focus on co-development of green solutions and co-creation to meet the global challenges. How did Sweden become a global innovation leader? Big and long-term investments in research and development with world-class companies and universities are of course one part of the story, an important one. But we are also a country of early adopters, open for new impressions and international collaborations. And we are a country with a strong focus on social inclusion and equality. To be truly innovative and to build more resilient societies, we need innovation processes that involves a wide group of people with different competences and different backgrounds. This is especially important in order to enable innovation on a systemic level. Developing innovative technological solutions and new processes is of course necessary to become a fossil-free society. But to change entire systems, we need to explore how these solutions can be introduced in everyday life. This transformation of society requires system innovation, a way of co-creating in real environment where technological and user behavior, culture, business models, policies, and regulations interact with each other. And this kind of complex system innovation requires a broad participation, where we harness the ideas and meet the needs of a diverse range of people. Today, you will learn more about how Sweden is mobilizing towards a more inclusive, diverse, and equal innovation system. I hope that the speakers will inspire you and spark new ideas for collaborations. Let's use our mutual strength and innovation capacity to find new ways of reaching the Sustainable Development Goals. To be able to reach them, we need everybody on board and we need to co-create. Thank you.
Thank you, Stina Billinger, for that, for kicking off the day. And Joachim, I thought we would continue with a word cloud, which hopefully we will see on screen now. And Joachim, you can already see them. What are the favorite words on that word cloud that you would like to highlight?
Given my background, I mean, the biggest one, data sharing and utilization, super important. Lots of silos to break down to make that work. Regulations, but also data sharing. Yeah, that's a lot of things to, when it comes to co-creation and collaboration, to make that work.
And I thought I was surprised to see future workplaces that big.
What is workplace? What is home?
You're going existential on me now.
Yeah.
What is home? Who am I? No, but I think it's interesting that we're questioning how we meet. I don't know if you've seen, but so many companies now are shifting to 4-day work weeks, which I find fascinating in a win-win, both in terms of productivity as well as freedom for workers.
Yeah, and we really need to start talking about the future of work as such, given automation and just trying to think of, what if I didn't work? What if I didn't have work as something that defines me as a person? Getting existentialistic again here.
But is this work? I mean, we're technically paid and we have a salary, etc.
Yeah.
But I find this hugely important, and I wouldn't do anything else with my time, given the worrisome transformation.
Yeah. So what's the definition? That you get paid or not? You're doing what you love.
But I am one of those people driven by fear. I do not love this. To paraphrase Greta, I shouldn't be here. I should have some sort of proper job.
Yeah.
We're getting too existential, but this will be a theme throughout the day. And let's move into maybe a bit more of the nuts and bolts of how to co-create and missions and having an impact. And it's a great pleasure to introduce Andreas Netz, Head of Department and Strategic Area Director Sustainable Mobility at Vinnova, Sweden's innovation agency. He's here to tell us more about creating system demonstrators. We'll discover what system demonstrators are, why they're important tools for broadening innovation practices and testings in real environments. Please, Andreas, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm really honored to be here and joining you all. And let's see if we could please put my slides up. Well, look, great, it worked. My name is Andreas Netz, and I am Head of Department at Vinnova, Sweden's innovation agency. And I will talk to you about system demonstrators. And during my talk, I will answer what a demonstrator is, but I will also talk to you a bit about why we need them and how they can be designed. But let's start by quickly looking at the what question. Okay, so what is a system demonstrator? Well, you can explain it as an innovation tool to mobilize partnership for large-scale testing and demonstration of system change in a real environment. All right, we will come back more to this later on what it is in detail, but let's look at the why question. Well, you heard Aurora and Joachim talk about both fear and hope, and this picture describes it well. We have obvious and complex health, socioeconomic, and environmental societal challenges. Luckily, we have a common global language for what we need to achieve. However, 2030 is rapidly approaching, and we need to transform our societal systems now. And according to the Professor Ronald Heifetz, each system is perfectly aligned to produce the result that it currently gets. And if this is the case, and if we're not happy with the results we're getting, how can we then change systems? Well, according to Jori van den Steenhoven, who's the former VP of System Innovation and Director of Mars Solution Lab, he says that system change is not about developing one solution to fix a problem. It's about experimenting with many interventions to unleash wider change towards a common goal. So for this to happen, as we all heard, we need to innovate how we innovate. So, and why is that? If we do a really short history lesson in the term of innovation here. So what we can see is that we've had 3 different paradigms in innovation policy, and each of these eras have had different innovation tools. And the first one, the frame 1, was focusing on research and development and regulation. It was focusing on the market failures. We had underinvestments in R&D, so we needed to invest more in order to get more research and development done. What we then saw was that this is not enough. We also need to have functioning innovation systems. So we need to have national systems of innovation and entrepreneurship. And this was when we had the development of the innovation system perspective in terms of the innovation policy, focusing on structural system failures. It was to increase capacity, infrastructure, and collaboration between the different actors in the system. What we now see has been emerging for a couple of years is the transformative change frame, which is the system innovation perspective, focusing on societal challenges and sustainability. And key elements are directionality, not only focusing on the technological and the supply side, but also on policy, business models, etc., and the change of entire systems. And what we see here is innovation tools like the ones Dan Hill and others talked about with mission-oriented innovation. We also have policy lab, challenge-driven innovation, but also the system demonstrators as one tool. All right, so system innovation perspective. So let's look a bit on what system innovation is. Well, according to the OECD, it's a horizontal policy approach that mobilizes technology, market mechanisms, regulations, and social innovations to solve complex societal problems in a set of interacting or interdependent components to form a whole socio-technical system. So in other words, innovate together with many perspectives, sectors, and actors, just like you heard the need to, that you heard Stina Billinger talk about. So then we have another interesting word here, the socio-technical system. And then you might ask, so what's a socio-technical system and how do we transform them if that's what we need to do? So let's look at the example of the socio-technical system for mobility. And we look at the example of transformation to electric and self-driving vehicles. So of course we need to start with the vehicle itself. We need to develop a car that's both electric and also self-driving. But this change will have also tremendous impact on the industry sector, the maintenance and distribution networks, the entire processes and products on the behind in order to make these vehicles, to develop these vehicles. This will also change the market and user practices. We need new business models. We see a need for new regulations and policies, since today it's not legal to have self-driving cars on the streets. And this will also transform us into having a mobility as a service instead of owning our car. And this will change the culture and the behaviors. Instead of having our own car, we use it as a service. We also need to change the infrastructure, specifically the fuel infrastructure, where we need to have charging networks. So to succeed, we must transform the entire mobility system, which is extremely comprehensive and complex, as it is an interconnected physical, technical, economic, and social system that's been developed for over 100 years. So in other words, technical innovation isn't enough. It's not enough just having electric cars. We need new services and business models. We need policy and regulations, as well as changing consumer behavior. And in order to succeed with system transformation, we need innovation with a system perspective. And a way of explaining what this system perspective is with these 5 dimensions. It's, of course, still necessary to have innovation when it comes to technology, products, and processes. But we also need to have innovations in business models and procurement, policy and regulations, behavior, culture, and values, as well as infrastructure. And this here means both physical and digital. And for this, we need new innovation tools to accelerate this transformation, because the current innovation tools aren't enough. And it's in this context we see the development of system demonstrators as one innovation tool to mobilize partnership for large-scale testing and demonstration of system change in a real environment. And the system demonstrator is a way of co-creating for innovation. The system demonstrator allows us to understand how the system reacts to the innovations and what elements of the current system are needed to change in order to achieve the desired system change. And sorry for a busy slide, but I'll go through a bit how then to create a system demonstrator. Well, what we need to have is we need to set up a large-scale demonstration where we see multiple innovative solutions, where we think we have the potential to create system change in line with SDGs. And we need to test this and demonstrate this in a real environment. What we also seen is that a key actor here is the challenge owners. So they must have both stated a clear need for the system change and the intention to actively participate in the design and implementation of the system demonstrator. We also see that the system demonstrator has to be designed and implemented with a clear system perspective by addressing all 5 dimensions of system innovation. And again, they are technology, business model, policy, behavior, and infrastructure. And the system demonstrator must include all the actors in the value chain that are needed to change the identified system. So I'll give you some real examples, and hopefully this makes it a bit more tangible. And one of these we will actually see a video presentation of afterwards as well. But we'll start with the real. And this is a large-scale demonstration of an electrified freight transport system. And the electrification of road transports is required to reduce the climate and health impact of heavy road traffic. And here we have a number of actors now joining forces to test and demonstrate electrified freight transport system in 2 Swedish regions. And they are aiming at a large-scale national introduction later. And you might think that this is only technical innovation, but it's not enough just cutting out the diesel. We need to change the infrastructure. There are policy changes and behavioral changes needed as well in order for this system change to happen. And some examples of the actors involved here is truck manufacturers like Volvo and Scania, but also electricity network companies, energy companies, charging station operators, logistic companies like DHL, and retail companies, and also public sector actors. The second case is the new recipe for school meals. And they are demonstrating how to design a sustainable system for school meals. Because to reach the sustainable development goals, we need to change the entire food system so that we can produce, buy, and eat food that benefits both health and the environment. And in this unique collaboration, the Swedish Food Agency and Vinnova are exploring how to design a sustainable system for school meals. And together with municipalities, businesses, students, teachers, cooks, dietitians, city planners, producers, and many more, we seek and test innovative solutions to identify challenges. And the idea here is that the school meals can demonstrate a model for how the entire food system can be changed. And the third and last example I'm going to give you is the street. And this demonstration is demonstrating how healthy and sustainable use of our streets. Because the challenges we face are complex, and the transformation required must take place here in our everyday lives. And the street demonstration takes place in Gothenburg, Helsingborg, and Stockholm. And their streets have been turned into areas for activities, meetings, and movement for people instead of cars. And the initiative involves housing and businesses, such as shops and schools, in the design by testing and demonstrating solutions for new urban environments for people in real conditions in real streets. And the success factor here as well has been that the key actors got involved from the beginning. And examples here are the citizens, the cities of Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Helsingborg, the Swedish Transport Agency, Arctis, Lundberg Design, Voi, Volvo Car Mobility, White Architects, Spacescape, and many others. All right, so with these 3 cases and this talk, hopefully now I've managed to answer what a system demonstrator is, but also why we need them and how we can create them. Thank you so much for having me, and back to Aurora and Joachim.
Thank you for sharing that. And you implicitly alluded to many of the things that we were talking about on Monday when we were talking about missions and the importance of this participatory aspect of systemic change. And I feel it's my role to channel the cynics in the audience and go devil's advocate here. Do we have examples of where we've been able to do systemic change? Because we all hear about the complexity and how hard it is. Does the system need to break down before you can build it up, or can you transform a system?
That's a very, very good and difficult question to answer. Hopefully we see examples, of course. I think also it depends on the time frame here. If you zoom out, we can of course see changes have happened. I mean, going back in time and towards now, we can see a lot of positive changes. But what I think at the same time, what you are perhaps asking about as well is that the current system will fight back most often. I heard somebody talk yesterday about, I think it was the League of the Willing, the League of the Willing, and I think it's the same here. I mean, you need to find where everybody's in agreement of, okay, we need to change the system, where we can find kind of win-win for both citizens, public actors, as well as businesses and civil society and others to work together on this change. Then I think we can see this actually happening. And I think when it comes to the system demonstrator, it's nothing more than a tool. But I think when we can see that this might be something that we can put it in the real environment, and we can co-create and test new ideas in the real environment, to actually see what do we need to have, what in the current system do we need to change in order to actually make this change happen. And when we do that and we get people involved, I think it's, I know Dan Hill talked also about the snowball effect, and I think it's the same here. When we start seeing, when we get traction and people picking this up, it will be difficult to stop it from happening after a while, hopefully.
This brings out the innovation theory nerd within me, I feel. But I mean, what is the system? How do you make sure that you address the right system? How do you fence that off? And how do you know that you find the acupuncture point that you would like to address?
That's, I guess, the I don't know, the 10,000 kroner question at least. I mean, I'm also kind of an innovation nerd. What I think is a difficult thing here is, I mean, we talk about the system perspective and having a holistic approach. But of course, it depends on how much you zoom out. I mean, if you zoom out, everything is one system. But in order to actually make this happen, I think you need to kind of de-scope it a bit to make it more tangible and having an impact. And what we will see here, of course, is that these three examples are interconnected in the system, of course. I mean, the electric trucks, they in that you transport food to the school system and you drive upon the streets, and so everything is interconnected. But I think if you try to, I'm all for testing this out, and that's where we are now. We need to have more testing of this as well. I mean, testing both new ideas, but also new methods and tools. And I think that to make it a bit more manageable, you need to kind of scope it somehow. Otherwise, it's going to be too difficult to have kind of sustainable Sweden as a system demonstrator. I think that would be quite difficult. But you can't do it too fragmented either, because then you will lose the system perspective. So you have to find something in between. And I don't really know.
I need to stop the innovation nerds, both of you, and because you're going down a rabbit hole, but it's interesting because it's academic and practical. And I'd like to just highlight what Robert Andredsen, the General Director of Energimyndigheten, in the inaugural speech on Monday, which is also the importance of storytelling. So in this, the innovators nerds conversation about this, which is important to have, we also need to be able to create stories and allow that to be part of the snowball effect. And I know you at Vinnova are working hard on that. Could you tell us a little?
I think this is part of that as well. I mean, having examples that we can kind of bridge from the innovation over to what we think needs to be done in order to implement it in real life. And then that's where we see the difficulty with, most often it doesn't come down to the technology. It comes down to hindering policy or behavior or business models or other things. So this is a way of doing that. It's kind of, I guess the system demonstrator could be a way of having that storytelling being done in real life to show you that this is the way we could do it instead. But that means you guys need to change, or we need to figure that thing out before we can actually have it implemented and scale. So I think the storytelling is crucial when it comes to this, and also having, some positive outlook, not only hearing about the negative stories. Like you can see here, change is actually happening. Here is examples that we can use.
Give people hope.
And clearly, with a big smile on your face, you're happy to be an innovation nerd and do what you're doing. And we're very grateful that you spend your time on it. Thank you for joining us and giving us perspective on system demonstrators.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we will move on to the film that Andreas was mentioning about regional electrified logistics, REAL, a real operation for electrification. Because the electrification of truck transportation is required to reduce the climate and health impact of heavy road traffic. And a number of actors are now joining forces to test electrified freight transport systems within the intent of large-scale national introduction. Please, roll the film.
Together with our partners, we at the Transport Innovation Platform Closer drive the REAL project, where we develop, demonstrate and analyze systems for electric trucks and stationary charging in regional logistics. We all know electric trucks have superior environmental characteristics compared to diesel trucks, thanks to low emissions of noise, particulates and gases. But their performance is different in such a way that the total logistics system needs to be modified, and a new electric energy supply system needs to be built up. Therefore, we run projects like REAL to learn how to handle these issues in an effective way.
As a logistic company dealing with both long-haul and general cargo distribution, it is vital to us to understand how the electric vehicles affect our logistic network. Since March 2021, we operate a 60-ton electric vehicle from Volvo, which is its first electric vehicle of its kind. The truck runs between two of our Swedish terminals, Jönköping and Gothenburg. Before it leaves Jönköping around midnight, it is charged and loaded with pallets and parcels. When arriving in Gothenburg in the morning, it is unloaded and charged before it starts its day shift in the Gothenburg area. When finalized, it will return to our Gothenburg terminal, load up and charge before it returns back to Jönköping again. With this setup, we gain around 450 and 500 kilometers of driving in a single day.
The REAL project and the collaboration between DHL and Volvo is not only a truck performance project, it's an innovation platform where we do learn a lot of knowledge around all the parts and pieces of a complete electrified logistics system. Of course, we learn a lot about truck performance and how different conditions affect energy consumptions, such as 5 centimeters of wet snow in a winter day. What does that make to energy consumption? We also learned a lot that could be used as input to policy development. Trucks are waiting for infrastructure and vice versa. So we need policy to step in with incentive schemes and public funding support system that will help the trucks and the infrastructure to come in place in a synchronized manner. So bringing policy into this is going to be vital if we're going to speed up the transition towards a sustainable transport system.
Every day, we are responsible for delivering groceries to supermarkets all around Sweden. In the REAL project, we have taken our first step to electrify our heavy truck transport from our warehouse near Stockholm. In order to minimize total cost of ownership, the vehicles operated in 2 shifts and are charged at the terminal port every time they return to the warehouse for reloading and also driver's break. This allows each truck to run approximately 5 routes from our warehouse every day.
For us as an OEM, it's important to learn from our customers and to adapt to the customer needs to find a suitable solution. And it's equally important to adapt to new findings during the demonstration so that we can propose new solutions to our customers. I think that this system demonstrator has really given us useful input for the future. And a key to success has been to have a close and transparent dialogue with our customer and transport partners in this, so that we can learn for the future.
Together with these pioneering companies in Real, we have already gained a lot of new insights and data from Real operations that will help us in the transformation to electrified logistics. We are now preparing for the next step, where we will scale up and learn how to handle several electric trucks in an operation.
Despite all the learnings we've done on the truck, perhaps the most important insight is actually to understand the complete system change that we are facing. It's not changing a truck, it is changing a complete transport system with all the new actors that are involved, charging operators, grid providers, etc. And we see that a lot of these challenges require new ways of working, and this innovation platform, the Real project, is really the base for that kind of learnings.
Thank you. And looking at this film, Joachim, what's your reflection on the co-creation aspect? What are the barriers to success from your point of view?
First of all, I understand the complexity of this system, right? I mean, you say it's just electrify, let's just do it. And then you look at this and you understand that, well, it's not that easy. Barriers of success, looking at all these commercial actors and companies collaborating like this in the same project with a common vision. I mean, that's a barrier of success that they've certainly overcome. So really inspiring to see that.
And is there an aspect in the commercial entities collaborating? Is there a question of old views on how to compete, and then therefore going into these collaborations is they're unused to it?
Interesting regarding collaboration, that within business, I feel that businesses now understand the power of collaboration and co-creation, that you cannot survive without collaboration. And it seems like these guys really figured that out.
And you use this as a blueprint for other types of collaborations? Can one pick out success factors, or is each system demonstrator, so to speak, unique?
Interesting. We're coming to Samverket within a short, collaborating between governmental agencies. Of course, I mean, finding out that what's the secret sauce in collaboration from businesses and apply that to other organizations, not only governmental agencies, but others. That's something for us to work more on.
Again, we've more questions and answers here, but please use the chat to contribute with maybe more questions or your suggested answers. But as I was saying both yesterday and Monday, this is also an opportunity to highlight what you're doing with within this context, because this is an opportunity to collaborate, and therefore raise a hand and point your finger at what you are doing. There's a hashtag, please use it. The conversation is mainly on LinkedIn, but of course Twitter. And now we have a Gapminder question, Joachim, that the audience has been looking at, and I'm going to see if you know the answer.
Okay.
The question is, what happened to the total amount of raw materials used across the world annually since 2020? And the audience got three choices. It stayed roughly the same. It's increased with circa 35%, or it's increased about 70%.
Well, I think it's skyrocketed. I think it's what did you have, 70%?
Yeah.
Okay, that's my answer.
Boom, right answer. Surprisingly, our audience actually, the majority thought increased by 35%. A whopping 37% of you thought that the usage of raw materials has stayed the same.
Wow.
Since 2020.
Okay.
Joachim, from your point of view, in terms of system transformation change, innovation and technology that obviously needs a lot of this raw material, why is it important to measure how much raw material we're using?
Well, first of all, understanding the complexity, coming back to the electrification example that we saw in Real, I mean, yes, we need to electrify, we need to turn sun and wind into power, sure, but there's a step in between, right? We need some materials to make that work. We need batteries. We need batteries to just even make the car run. We need batteries up here in the dark, cold north to store. How do we get batteries? Well, we have to use raw materials, and those raw materials are not endless. So I don't. That's a part of. I mean, so I was on the dystopic side of things in this answer, but it gets worse.
But there's also the parallel strands of activity in a transformation. Okay, so now we're doing an energy switch. We know that electrification is a key aspect in that transformation. We know which raw materials we need to use for batteries, etc. But in parallel, as we're doing this transformation, we're also looking at other ways to energize, and we're looking at other ways to create batteries. How do you balance investing heavily in something that potentially is suboptimal because something else is coming and something else is coming?
We need to have perspectives beyond the quarterly report or the period of years that you have that you're in office. You need way much longer perspectives when it comes to investments, and understand that this is not. I mean, if we keep on investing in this in the dirty technology, then we won't create that change. So I think we need to prolong the perspectives in some way.
And it's a question of not only investing in the dirty technology, investing in the suboptimal clean one, knowing that cheaper clean is coming. And your colleague yesterday, Anders Brinner, gave a cheeky comment to the State Secretary, was talking about the funding perspectives, and I think she got the message that we also need funding with a longer horizon. And now on to the next speaker, because mitt fel. So, addressing our sustainable development goals are, as we have discussed, by nature complex. Adding to the analysis is obviously the political and social context and dialogue. In short, social media. And the tone of the digital realm has a huge impact on all of this. And no one is better equipped than our next speaker to unpack the importance of the digital public space and the storytelling that we were alluding to before. The digital transformation affects our democratic dialogue. Understanding of how we can strengthen democracy in a digital age is crucial for building resilient societies. So please welcome Carl Heath, senior researcher at RISE. Carl, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. So, hi. Today I'm going to speak on the importance of digital public spaces and how they relate to democracy. So, if we want our societies to thrive, we need to make democracy. We need to build and develop democracy in such a way that it's not stale or static. We can't let our democratic institutions become simply points of interest in history. We need to live democracy by together exploring, adapting, and improving it. So, over the past 30-odd years, the internet has evolved and played an integral part in modern society and culture. The internet plays an important part in modern democracies, and with all its facets, it has become an ever more important environment for democracy to evolve. An important aspect of the internet is that it enables user-generated content to be shared. And even though these aspects of the internet are old, the rise of social media, where everybody is a content creator, has accelerated the possibilities for everybody who wants to try to influence the much larger social dialogue we have about what's going on in the world and how we view the world that we share. The internet has made it possible for people all over the world to raise their voices and share their ideas in ways that was just not possible before. But just as the internet has enabled new possibilities for democracy, we also see darker and more problematic aspects that are worrisome. There are reasons to be worried on issues that affect us as individuals, but also towards those issues that poses threats to our communities and our democracies. Over the past years, we've taken part in conversations on how myths and disinformation can manipulate us and our elections. We have heard about how platforms might be used to increase polarization and make us more intolerant towards each other. We have also come to understand how platforms use concepts of surveillance capitalism to design services where the user is the product and the advertiser is the customer. I believe we have come to a point where we need to take a step back and reflect on the state of things. We need to ask ourselves, how can we use the internet to benefit democracy and at the same time mitigate the risks that we can clearly see? In this field, there's so much to explore, to test and reason around. And one such area I believe holds possibilities for the future of democracy is the need to have a conversation on the importance of digital public spaces. We need to understand what they are, why we need them, and how to bring them to use in our everyday lives. We need to inspire a broad and ongoing discussion within society, with politicians, researchers, activists and lawyers, technologists and journalists, and many more, about how we can use the internet and its vast potential to strengthen democracy all over the world. What's at stake is social society's digital public space. It has changed over time from the first years of the internet, marked by thoughts of openness and freedom, to today, when our digital environments have been commercialized in several respects and run by a few global companies. This change in the digital public space affects democracy, and it's problematic from a number of aspects. Most people perceive the public space as a physical place. It can be the street or the square, the park, the library, or the museum. Public spaces plays a major role in our democracy. They're places where residents meet to talk and gather, debate and demonstrate. The public space needs possibilities of meetings and connections between people, even for those who do not know each other. The public space is also a place where even those who do not share opinions, worldviews, or knowledge horizons meet and see each other. It contributes to the cohesion of society. As our societies become ever more digital, our talks and meeting places, debates and demonstrations, to a large degree, move from the physical to the digital space. Social media plays a central role in the entire development of society. They have become some of the most central places for society's diversity of conversations and meetings. And this change has gone fast. A few companies now constitute the digital infrastructure that hosts many of our society's conversations, debates, and meetings. Furthermore, it's also the case that the platforms we use to engage in most civic discourse are to a great extent owned by economic interests, which are primarily funded by advertising revenue. That is to say that we use digital infrastructure that has interests and purposes and goals that are other than that of contributing to the maintenance and development of a democratic society. We have gone from having a physical infrastructure where public, civic, and private actors share space to a digital environment where a vast majority of the places we visit are private. This profound change affects democracy in, as I see it, primarily 4 perspectives. The first perspective is that of securing our digital public spaces. The public space and its conversations, debates, and meetings that take place there constitute one of society's central functions. The digital public spaces we use are therefore becoming a critical infrastructure for society. When they fail us, we have a hard time carrying out even the most basic of public conversations. It will be important to secure the conditions for democratic dialogue in a digital age, not only in peacetime, but also in times of crisis and conflict. We need to ask ourselves how we secure our democracies and our digital public spaces, also in the worst of times. The second perspective is that of the lack of digital public meeting places. Today, in practice, we only have commercial social media available to socialize, to talk, debate digitally. But it leads to problems when there are no real alternatives than the commercial ones. In our digital existence, we have shopping centers, but no public squares. We have private gardens, but no public parks. We have private galleries, but no public art galleries. The public and the civil society have chosen to place their talks, meetings, and debates in these commercial environments without any major public or non-profit alternatives. And the ability of public actors and civil society to contribute to shaping the future of society in digital environments is severely limited by the will, interests, and developments dictated by others for other purposes. I think it's time to look ahead with lessons learned from history, where previous technological innovation, such as, for example, the radio and the television, paved way for the development of public service. The third perspective is the need for equal opportunities for all to participate in society. When society's conversations take place in company-owned social media, not everyone can participate in the conversation. It is the company's rules that determine who can participate and engage. The rules of our conversations are dictated by the will and the interests of the owners of the platform. It's also the company's choices of algorithms that dictates the conditions for which conversations are seen, spread, and heard the most. It is the company's design that shapes the fabric of conversations. A single change in a service can have unforeseen and profound effects on the content and format of conversations, often without the users being aware of it. And when we unintentionally let our political conversations or public services communicate only through social media, we thereby exclude many citizens from the opportunity to take part in the conversation. The fourth perspective is that of the fragility of our history in digital spaces. Sweden has a proud and strong tradition of the principle of openness, and laws and regulations for developing, managing, and archiving public documents, as well as documents that public institutions and the media produce. But when the communication and documents produced by the public sector only is to be found on social media or in the digital private places of individuals, much of the documentations we take for granted in society risks to no longer being available. It's also the provider of the service that dictates the conditions for how researchers and journalists can study the data generated by public and civic institutions. When the service ends, or when the link dies, the data disappears. Without new and novel regulation and innovation in these areas, which are also complied with, we risk making our digital society lack basic open data on society that informs current and future researchers, journalists, public opinion makers, and others of our time. Democracy isn't static. We shape and mold it together in the context of the times in which we live. We evolve society and democracy through democratic conversations where different opinions, thoughts, and ideas are given the opportunity to be tried, tested, and explored. The public space helps to make these democratic conversations possible. And that's why it's so important that we safeguard the freedom, opportunity, and accessibility of public space. We need to continue to explore, innovate, and bring to light new ideas about the design of public spaces, both the digital and the physical. Our public spaces, digital and physical, must be attractive meeting places for everyone. The public spaces help to define the character of our countries and help shape society. It's a daunting task for the public and civic sectors to take part in the development of digital public spaces. But this development also creates opportunities to equip and strengthen democracy for the future. In a digital society, we need a diversity of spaces that are shaped for different purposes and by different actors, both private, public, as well as civil society. In this way, society becomes richer, stronger, and more prosperous. There is therefore no time to spare to engage in the development of our digital public spaces, as well as digital infrastructure for democracy that is not copies of the commercial ones, but shaped for its own purposes and in the service of society and citizens. There are some examples of well-functioning digital infrastructure and services that many of us use, such as Wikipedia, as a further development of the encyclopedia, and the Internet Archive, the leading open digital archive on the internet. And there's ongoing research in many places, as well as interesting examples in civil society that shows commitment to the issue. One such is the initiative New Public in the United States, or the NGO Digidem Lab in Sweden, and many others. If we want to see strong democratic societies in a digital age, we can't wait with engaging in these conversations. We need to see innovation in public, civic, and private environments that aims at building strong digital democracies and digital public spaces. We must strengthen our commitment to these issues in public and civil society. Sweden celebrates 100 years of democracy, and if we want to see a strong democracy in 100 years' time, these issues and this innovation just can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you very much. That was super interesting. I need to be a bit introspective here because in my day job, we're looking for weak signals. And one weak signal that I picked up last year was how often my colleagues brought up the future of democracy and its sibling, future of governance. There was something in there. I felt that this is perhaps something we need to address. So thank you very much for fueling that discussion, moving onwards. But there's more talk than at our offices. For instance, there was this Future of Democracy Summit just a few months ago. So there's absolutely talk, but is there action? And if not, where to start? Who starts where? What do you say?
Oh, that's a super good question. I would say that there is things that happen in research and in civic society. We see a lot of action going on, as well as in some countries around the world exploring. But I would want to see governments take a much stronger hold, not be sort of backwards looking or just trying to mitigate risks of what we have, but being optimistic, looking into the future, and actually being in the front seat of the exploration of society. This is a mission we have to explore and innovate around democracy. And our societies and our civic institutions need to be in the front seat of that innovation. They can't be anywhere else. And so my hope is that countries all around the world see to it that this is an issue that is of grave importance for them. If we can put millions into investing in our physical world as governments and societies, why not do it in the digital world as well?
Mm.
One of the things that we've been slightly existential here on stage before you came, and one of the things I was reflecting on while you were speaking is the historian Yuval Harari's talk about and discussion about free will, and free will is obviously one of the fundaments of democracy. But using the digital channels, we can potentially manipulate what we think is free will and change behaviors. How do you see that debate fitting in? How we restructure digital channels in order to secure democracy?
I lost your sound for a small second, so pose the question once more.
I was referring to Yuval Harari's talk about free will and how the computing power and understanding of neuroscience is questioning if we have free will. And the digital channels is obviously a potential channel to manipulate behaviors, feelings, and therefore potentially undermining this democratic system that we want to strengthen. How do you see that debate fits in how we strengthen democratic institutions?
I would say that it ties in such a way that society needs to be in the front seats of its own innovation. We know that the technologies that we use can inform our choices in all various ways, shapes, and sizes. And if we want to have a public square with equal opportunity for all, we need to design institutions and environments that support that, where that is in the foci of that space. And that is what I would want to see more innovation and engagement around, where these kinds of insights are taken into consideration in such a way that we can create spaces where many can engage and explore together.
Thanks. We got a question from the audience, right? At least one. Let's see who's out there. Hi, welcome to Sweden Innovation Days. What's your name and where are you from?
I'm Johan Edmark. I'm from SISP, Swedish Incubators and Science Parks.
Welcome.
Thank you, Carl, for addressing a really important issue. I have two questions for you, really. What would you like to see in the coming 5 years, to be very concrete? What kind of actions would you like to see? And the second question, representing incubators and science parks, it's a lot of focus, of course, on startups, but nowadays also scale-ups. So what are your and Vinnova's idea of how to involve startups and scale-ups in those challenges?
So on the first question, what I would want to see in the coming 5 years or so, I would want to see a much more strong engagement by actors working actively with the issue at hand. So I would want to see more actors in the democracy space engaging in technology conversations. And I want to see environments where you can have these spaces and environments inform each other. I would also want to see much more work on digital infrastructure for democracy, working on innovation around how we can strengthen democracy through technology and technological innovations. And that would be sort of the way in which I would also want to see private companies as well as civic society work on the tech side of innovation. We shouldn't neglect the fantastic innovation that takes place in civic society, also in the tech scene. The open space or the open software environments often include other actors than purely commercial actors. And I would want to see an engagement from all these specters and domains, because these aren't questions of economical interests in the is sort of the front seat, but issues of society at large and democracy. And that's from the vantage point where we want to see this change occur.
And and your ideas how to involve the big startups and scale-up scene in Sweden?
I don't have a good and strong, straight answer towards that. I would want to see a sort of cross-border collaboration from all kinds of actors, using good and innovative and novel ways of how to innovate and inform the future. And I think our tech scene in Sweden usually has a very strong reputation for working with good and modern methodologies and ways in which to bring this about. So they clearly have all kinds of reasons for taking part in this landscape, absolutely.
We will be glad to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johan, for that question. And thank you, Carl, for being with us. This has certainly been an interesting 15, 20 minutes with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on. We've been talking about already the importance of collaboration and co-creation, which is the theme of today, of course, but it has already been mentioned numerous times the previous days as well, and I'm sure we're going back to that tomorrow as well. And it's making that happen between companies. That comes natural. It's a matter of survival. It's not a question of if we should collaborate or co-create. It's how businesses operates. But what about governmental agencies? How can we make collaboration and co-creation work between those entities? So how do we get the coffee machine ranting banter going or the water cooler gossiping going? That's not what Samverket is all about. Samverket is all about getting the co-creation and collaboration process going between governmental agencies. And here's a video explaining more about that.
Well, the complex societal challenges of today, like climate, lack of well-being, inequality, migration, those cannot be solved by public institutions when working in silos and with traditional ways of working. But change is about people. And we at Vinnova, the Swedish innovation agency, we thought that maybe it doesn't have to be that complicated. And the idea of the initiative and experiment Samverket is that when putting people together on a regular basis in an innovative environment, collaboration across organizational boundaries will happen naturally. And that's how we can create the future together.
So the whole place is designed for interaction. It's not a co-working where you just sit and do your normal work. Here, you interact with others. So we have designed it as a path in the forest, where we have the campfire, where we listen to each other's stories, and we also find why the challenges are there. So we can find ways to create new solutions in another place on this path in the forest.
And we value inclusion, the free mind, but also collaboration, sharing of stories, breaking norms, feeling at home. But most important of all, allowing errors and mistakes to take place.
I think it's very exciting, and I think it's also very necessary in today's working life to find new ways in order to develop the work and the agency that I'm in charge of, but also to put people together and see what happens. They have different experiences, they have different educations and different ideas that they can bring together. And I think that could be like a melting pot where innovation actually can happen.
Well, at the Mid Sweden University, we do have the research and we do have the educational side. So we believe that if we take all these competences together with the other public actors, we can probably have new ideas to tackle the societal challenges that we have in front of us. The police department are here. I'm anxious to work with them, and we'll have the tax authority. We probably can do something with them as well, so we'll see.
So it's all about connecting people, making social capital stronger between people and knowledge. The knowledge together is stronger than only one single man. So here we make solutions for the future.
Thank you for that. And I have a question for you, Joachim, because all this sounds great. And again, I'll take my role seriously, channeling the cynics in the audience. Isn't this very like new agey campfire storytelling? Don't we have like real work to do? How do we think about this in terms of the old hippie versus getting the job done?
Okay, I can see what you mean. And the guys out there, the skeptics. You don't have to sit around a campfire, of course, but also just recently, just minutes ago, we discussed the need of new narratives, need of new stories. So we need to give room for new stories. We need to listen to each other, telling stories, putting your own visions and thoughts about what the future should be like, and make room for that. If it's around the campfire or not, that doesn't really matter. But also what's important, I think, is when do you see real great outcome from your work? It's when you collaborate. It's when you let different perspectives and different expertise meet and you find your way forward together. And that's what's happening when you work like this.
And obviously, I didn't mean my question, but I think there is a good proportion of people out there that are still uncomfortable with some parts of the process, and therefore, in order to feel secure in what they are used to, secure in their old importantness, it's easy to ridicule and make jokes of the campfire. Sure. How do you deal with that? Because it is a reality.
Well, of course, we have to take that into account and be open towards that, because I agree that's not, I mean, being very progressive and looking for new methods and ways of working is not for everyone. So those that are in front, those that are the pioneers, should really look back as well and make sure that everyone's on board and be careful.
Or not everyone's on board. Feel comfortable with what we're doing and why it's important, and then be a system demonstrator of sorts, and maybe
sure.
people
Why
follow.
not? Yeah.
We won't answer the question, but I think it's important to be transparent about the challenges in that.
Yes, indeed.
And our next speaker, we want to discuss how we innovate, and in that regard, looking at inclusion and equality. We all know why, but we will now get help to look at how. So our next speaker will give us an overview of how to understand and promote innovation that harnesses the ideas and meets the needs of a diverse range of people, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, and education. Co-creating includes futures from social to sustainable innovation. Malin Lindberg, Professor of Gender and Technology, Luleå University of Technology. Welcome, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So now we'll see if my presentation is showing somewhere also. There, great. I'm very happy to be here to give you a 15-minute crash course to how to co-create inclusive futures. And I chosen the subheading of from social to sustainable innovation in order to connect it to this trend and also phenomenon of social innovation and also of the sustainability issues. So the main question for today and the whole conference is, of course, how can we innovate how we innovate? So we heard at this conference the preceding days and the preceding hours now, today also, that we have sort of moved from the left side of this slide to the right side. So more and more from this, or we haven't moved in practice, but at least in starting to move, moving in policy foremost, but some are also doing this in practice, but not the whole practice. From this innovation frenzy, where we sort of innovate new things just in order to innovate and to have this technology push that we can do this, you can innovate these things, but that maybe in an unsustainable manner. And we also have this pro-innovation bias that innovation is always regarded as something good and valuable, instead of really estimating the consequences of innovation and for whom is this innovation process really conducted and beneficial. So to the right side, we have this more overall a sustainable focus on the sustainable development goals, co-creation, as we heard a lot of examples today. We have also social innovation that I will talk a bit about. So I will sort of give you a crash course on this movement with a focus on inclusion. So this is also the main question, who invents the future? And then, of course, I've consciously and deliberately chosen this picture in order to have this sort of normative type of the innovator or the businessman. But then we can contrast that with this initiative that is called Passionista, that was funded by Vinnova and that involved young women based on their own passions and interests. How could they innovate the future? So instead of starting off that making these young women become more interested in technology and innovation per se, they started off in what are their passions from the start. So you can read more about this initiative at passionista.nu or .nu. And they also have videos and influencers as part of this initiative. And now I come to one of my theoretical parts here. So because we have studied exclusive and inclusive mechanisms when trying to promote innovation in different types of areas. So we have the structures. Of course, that's the most obvious, but who is represented in this area? Who is sort of made visible and recognized as an innovator, but also as a user and also as an innovation promoter. And then we also have the symbols, also how is innovation and innovators portrayed in images and texts, because that, if you see that over and over again in your everyday life, of course that affects how you view what the innovator is and so forth. And then we also have the relations, that how is the reception and also perception of different innovators, of different innovations, and also of the users. How do we perceive and receive each other based on these normative assumptions? And then we also have the identities. What are the self-images and self-esteem among different groups of people in order to identify themselves as innovators or innovation promoters or as users of this specific product or service. And at the bottom, you can see that the products and processes in themselves can have exclusive and inclusive mechanisms depending on what is the supply of different kinds of products and how are different processes managed. For example, in regard to co-production and co-creation, who is involved in this and who gets to decide what types of products that we are going to, and services and other types of solutions that we need to have in society. So that's just a very short introduction to a very complicated picture. And of course, some of you see that this is very inspired by the sociologist Jon Acker. But we developed it in order to fit the needs of innovation promotion. Here is an example of a digital tool called Richer Business that is designed in order to help innovation promoters and also innovators and companies and other types of organizations to develop their business models and organizational models into a more inclusive manner. So it's built upon different scenarios where you sort of are you get to read a short description of a situation that can occur, maybe in regard to product development or communication or recruitment. And then you sort of are guided through a process with different discussion questions and methods and literature that you can read for further inspiration and so forth. So if anyone you haven't try this tool, I highly recommend it. It's freely available online at this website that I sort of included up at the top right there. It's very small, but depending on the size of your screens, of course. So my second question is how to invent sustainable futures. And here I want to take this example of a Her City, and we're also going to watch a movie about this initiative just after my presentation. And their own, this is from their website, and their own headline is "The Tables Are Turned." And I thought that that was a really good headline for introducing how to invent a sustainable future, how to, in this case, include young women and girls in urban development, because traditionally urban development has mainly been sort of managed by professionals in technological professions, and often men, and often white men, and often white middle-aged men, and so forth and so forth. So they sort of turn the tables and start off with young women that are who are often excluded from these kinds of processes. So in Sweden, this has been managed as an initiative called Urban Girls Movement, and that is part of this larger part of Her City, where the tankesmedja, I don't know the English word for that, think tank, of course, the think tank Global Utmaning has been the Swedish partner in this. And they have also been financed by Vinnova. And there you can read more about them also at that website that you see there, down there. And some theory, again, I am a researcher, as you know, so I have to sort of put in the theoretical parts. So here is a model that we designed based on very extensive research and practical experiences of developing and also promoting social innovation in Sweden and internationally. And that process was also, of course, funded by Vinnova. So you see the impact of Vinnova. It's not only that I deliberately chose such an example, it's also that Vinnova has had that impact on both research and practice when it comes to inclusive innovation in Sweden. And that has started already at the beginning of the 2000s, when at the turn of the millennium, you can say, with a better pronunciation, when Vinnova was initiated. So at the very beginning, they started to fund these kinds of initiatives, and they have continued to do so. And we will hear more about that later from Sofia Ivarsson from Vinnova also. But here we come into this, what would you say, phenomenon and concept of social innovation. And social innovation has been mentioned a few times during this conference, of course, and that's the need for a term for social innovation was actually motivated by the heavy technological and industrial focus that the sort of general innovation concept had gained in Sweden and also internationally from the 60s and onwards. So today, it was sort of neat. Also the term social innovation has been around since sort of the 19th century, so that's not new per se. But the use of the social innovation concept has revived or revitalized during the last decades in order to pinpoint innovation that explicitly aims to promote well-being, empowerment, people's relations, and these other social sustainability issues. So it's very, very connected to sustainable innovation, to sustainable transformation, to sustainable development, as I show in this picture. So from social innovation to sustainable transformation, I've chosen that headline in order to sort of highlight the process of social innovation, that you need to work with different tools that is illustrated in this picture. So in the middle, you can see this goals of broadened idea flow in order for more people, more perspectives to be included in innovation processes in order to form and shape the future. We also have the diversity of different innovators. So it's not only one type of people that get to realize their ideas regarding maybe based on their education level or their age or their background and ethnicity or gender and so forth. And in order to strive for sustainable renewal. So at the arrows you can see around this middle, you can see the broadened views and the widened perspective of whose ideas are prioritized, whose perspectives are used, whose needs are addressed in this. So you can have that as a constant reminder when going through this, how to identify needs to address social innovation, to co-create with different types of actors, to design and realize these ideas in real life settings. And of course, all these processes have to be adapted to the prerequisites and needs of the target groups and sort of the co-creators in order for them to be willing and able to use these solutions. You can invent a lot of good stuff in this innovation frenzy manner, but in order to really develop social innovations that are helpful and that contribute to sustainable transformation, that is, that it contributes to transformation on the individual level, on the organizational level, and the societal level, then you really need to be able to sort of produce a solution that is adapted to the everyday life of the people who are going to use them. Here is one example of a toolbox that has been developed also, of course, with funding from Vinnova. That is called the Joint Way. So this you can find both in Swedish and in English, where it gathers different kinds of tools for promoting and developing social innovation, because there were no such toolbox available in Sweden. There are some examples international, but this is the first Swedish one based on the experiences of innovation promoters in Sweden. So it's really bottom-up created. So it's available both in Swedish and English, but I've chosen, of course, the English version today in order to fit the overall language. And I also wanted to highlight the Yes Way. So firstly, I mentioned the Joint Way for social innovation, and now we have the Yes Way for promoting gender equal and inclusive innovations and business support. And that is also provides guides, tools, knowledges in order to help people with different gender, ethnicity, age, and so forth to realize their ideas. And that has also been funded by Vinnova. So my last slide, for those of you who like to read, I wanted to highlight 3 quite recent publications that are freely available. You can just for those of you who can do a screenshot, do it now so you can see this. Maybe we can enlarge them also from the, yeah, good. So you can see this, so you can just Google these. So these are 3 different takes on inclusive innovation, unfortunately only in Swedish, but those were the examples that I wanted to promote. So that was this crash course. I could go on for hours, but I've given you a few highlights about this area.
Well, thank you for that.
Thanks.
So many different perspectives there. And we have a film, right?
Yes, no, I highlighted before that we were going to watch this Her City film. So that is what we're going to do now.
Let's roll the film.
Urbanization brings enormous challenges, not in least in terms of inequality. When cities are poorly planned, it is often followed by widening gaps between urban centers and the outskirts, and between different groups in the society. In fact, women and girls are particularly vulnerable in the light of rapid urbanization. For this reason, it is so important to include girls and young women in the decision-making processes regarding urban development.
In 2016, we started an initiative called Urban Girls Movement. We really tried to provide a method for girls to work together with professionals in redesigning their cities.
So we saw that the presence of young girls in the public space in Fittja, and in particular the central parts, was limited. And that was due to a feeling of unsafety, but also to the fact that there is an open drug scene in the area. So we saw that Fittja was a particular priority when it comes to listening to young girls and making their voices heard.
The project started out with us going for a walk in the area and talking about how they made us feel and how certain places made us feel unsafe and what we would like to improve, such as brighter lights, more colors, or just places that we can sit so we're able to hang out with friends and also make people stay in Fittja. So it's just not a place that we pass by. And it ended up with Minecraft that helped us visualize our ideas.
After that, we prioritize what is most important to actually change and build according to these girls. And then they deliver these proposals to their local leaders.
Urban Girls Movements inspired us by highlighting the need of shape and colors that turns a public place into a living room. Visible here from Regnbågsparken, the Park of the Rainbow, where we stand, is a proof that you can take back a public space that's been occupied by criminals back to the local residents.
In Botkyrka, we have had a lot of different working methods to include our inhabitants,
but the Urban Girls movement had helped us to develop them further and with a broader perspective, so we can change the structure for real.
After the project, I would say I've seen differences in general, such as like brighter colors, more lighting, and like in general, more people just playing in the local area, and that's been a very good impact from the project.
After we did the pilot here in Fittja, the next step was digitizing for global scaling. The toolbox consists of 9 blocks, representing the 3 phases of urban development processes. The toolbox provides a clear guideline on how to carry out the project, while still allowing flexibility and context sensitivity. The platform was launched on International Women's Day in 2021 and is used in 280 cities in 90 countries. The Her City team is currently supporting 10 flagship projects around the world, the first one taking place in South Africa, Johannesburg.
Poverty is not just about the lack of money, it's the lack of information, opportunity and choice. And in an impoverished township like Diepsloot, it's also the lack of having a voice or being able to fix what you see is wrong. So at first the girls said that there were challenges with gender-based violence, with teenage pregnancy, drug and alcohol abuse, gangsterism. But when we went on the exploratory walk, it was interesting to see how angry they got about water running down the street, sewage overflowing, children having nowhere to play. And I can't wait to see when the tactical urbanism plays out and they see that they are empowered to actually make a change and that their visions can become a reality.
Cities can only be of service to its people when planned from the lens of its most vulnerable inhabitants.
I would like to see my point being seen and my dreams being visualized, because I dream for Diepsloot to be a better place, and I believe that with my help it could be a better place.
Thank you, Malin, for sharing that and the film as well. Malin, something that I was reflecting on while you were talking, and obviously you were joking about you being an academic, and there's lots of theoretical aspects to this. And I would like to borrow, copy with pride, a question from the audience that we had 2 days ago, which was, if you had a really constrained budget, like if you come from a developing country of sorts, how would you prioritize? What would be the most important things to do to make a dent and a real movement in these questions?
Of course, to start off with those who sort of owns the problems. So both the politicians and those who are responsible for it, but also those who are affected by it. To really start off in that. Often innovation processes start in the middle, I would say, that they start off with the ideas instead of starting in what is the real problem? How can you understand that? Not only from a professional point of view, but from a real user and sort of everyday person point of view. What is the problem, sort of?
I look at you then, Joachim, because potentially you are what she says, you are in the middle. Where are you starting in the middle?
Like in the middle, from which perspective, as Vinnova or
as Vinnova?
Yeah, right. Well, I was just thinking about the total different. Is it okay if I just, because I was so intrigued by this film and the part where they come to the global scaling, because we talk so much about we're so small. What can Sweden do? And then when it comes to the part in the film clip where they describe how to scale this globally. I love that part. What's your take on how can we, in Sweden, how can we accelerate being a forerunner within this field?
Yeah, what we can see from research on social innovation process is that you can scale up and you can scale deep. So what is this purpose of the scaling? Because often it's sort of these innovation friends and this pro-innovation bias is that you should scale. But not social innovations have to be scaled. They can also have a deeper impact in different localities. And when you scale, you have to be really conscious about how to make the solution flexible to all these different places, because all places are different social geographies, so to say. So that would be also interesting to hear more about in the Her City movement, how to adapt this to these different cultural and social settings.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
As you say, I mean, there are many, of course, grand challenges that are similar across the world or across different contexts. So there is some sort of potential to not invent the wheel over and over again in all places.
Which is a great bridge to our next panel, actually. And Malin, thank you so much for sharing your work and insights. Because the next panel is about international collaboration, and potentially we'll be able to ask them about how to take the local to the regional, to the national, to the regional, to the international. Because it's about how do we create a broad inclusiveness that helps foster greater innovation and collaboration. What are the key success factors when driving co-creation in innovation internationally? And how do we foster a stronger international culture of collaboration? So this panel would talk about driving innovation, different stakeholders, and how the different perspectives interlink and co-create in the co-creation. See, we can do all these buzzwords. I would like to introduce and welcome the next panel. Rodney Gailey, Assistant Secretary to the Cabinet Impact and Innovation Unit, Privy Council Office of the Government of Canada. Cindy So, IKEA Global Innovation and Co-Creation Matrix Manager. And Göran Lindsjö, Senior Advisor at AI Sweden. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, Rodney, I'd like to start with you. We've been talking all throughout this weekend today about co-creation, collaboration, the missions and the great challenges of our time. Could you take a few minutes to reflect on your work and how you see this improving and moving the needle, so to speak?
Yes, happy to do so. Thank you so much, and I'm really glad to be here today. And I'm clearly going to add to the buzzwords that you were just sort of introducing us with kind of within this space. And so I'll just start by contextualizing the work that we do sort of here in Canada. Obviously, I'm going to be taking a perspective of public sector innovation, and I'll kind of explain our context because I think it's really important as we kind of juxtapose with Cindy and Goran and kind of others that have been talking throughout the week sort of in this conference. And so what really kind of underlies our perspectives on inclusiveness and broad inclusiveness to help promote sort of effective innovation, which is really key. It's foundational based on two main principles in my mind. So one of shared value and the other one of a citizen-centered approach. And so just for the audience's, I guess, own edification, from a government standpoint, I work in the federal government here in Canada. We are what's called a Westminster style of government. So we have, one minister accountable for one department. We have 3 levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipal. So it's a really complex, highly bureaucratic environment. Trying to express those principles and promote inclusiveness to promote innovation is a very tough endeavor. It's very difficult. This idea of shared value is one where, and I would say sort of a citizen-centered approach, is one where you are trying to ensure that, colleagues and ministers across government and sort of within layers of government sort of understand ultimately what is the ultimate outcome that we are looking to achieve. Obviously, within a public sector context, it is about developing sort of the best policies and implementing those policies in a way that provides sort of a better outcome, a better quality of life for our citizens. And so, working where I work, so I work with what's called the Privy Council Office. It is centrally located. In essence, it is the department that serves the Prime Minister. So it allows me to work horizontally across those silos, which naturally sort of form within government. To ensure that we can help sort of, draw upon sort of the expertise, the insights of everyone across these different sort of layers of government to develop those high impact policies. So now I want to juxtapose that sort of outside of government. And so, yes, we have an inclusive approach within government, but in order to succeed, we need to ensure that we engage our citizens in the development of those policies as well as the implementation of those policies. And so here in Canada, a program that I manage, which is called the Impact Canada Initiative, it was set up several years ago to help sort of incent what we call these open innovation approaches or outcomes-based policy approaches. These are approaches that are very much focused on outcomes and not sort of processes. One of the tools that we use are these challenge prize sort of tools. And I think people are kind of familiar with them, say the X Prize or sort of others. And it is a highly sort of deliberative and inclusive model. It is atypical sort of within governments. It's one where we have citizens engaged within the development of sort of the problem sort of statement and the problem sort of ideas. And so just to give you kind of a concrete example of one of the projects that we're working on right now, it's called the Deep Space Food Challenge. This is helping to develop sort of new and novel food systems for deep space travel. Those technologies that we're going to be developing for our astronauts that go for long, say like 2, 3, 4 year space missions would also be used here domestically, you know, in our sort of rural, remote sort of climates. And so we've had, you know, high levels of engagement with citizens as we were developing that process. But now as we're sort of implementing it, we also have what's called external adjudication. So we have these experts like astronauts, you know, food scientists, food engineers, as part of that process that are basically sort of guiding it through every stage of the process. So it's a highly deliberative, it's a highly sort of inclusive model. And ultimately it is what we call kind of democratizing the decision-making sort of process. And so these are using, you know, taxpayer dollars for programs. And we have citizens and taxpayers actually making the decisions of where these dollars will be sort of invested. And so taken together, what we have tried to sort of, I guess, create and kind of incent is a highly deliberative, a highly sort of inclusive model where we have Canadians engaged within these processes. We ensure that we understand sort of the role of the public and sort of private sectors within that. And ultimately, as I said, we take a citizen-centered approach, which in essence is, I think, kind of the embodiment of inclusiveness within an innovative sort of process. So maybe I'll just kind of stop there.
Thank you, Rodney. And there's a lot of things to unpack, and I will ask you several questions, especially about outcome and conflicting goals. But let's park that for a second. And Sydney, please give us your take. You've even in your title used the word matrix, showing that it is complicated and there are several aspects here. Talk about what you do and how you see inclusiveness and innovation.
Absolutely. So for us, innovation is not dictated or held in one location. It really is a collaboration and a combination of various individuals from various backgrounds, not ethnicity or gender. It's really about what skill set or background do you come from and what can you bring to the table, a very different perspective than others around you. And so innovation is not, again, is central. It should be decentralized. Everyone should hold a piece of that innovation, be able to contribute a puzzle to create more innovative solutions, whether that be a service or a product. My role at IKEA is to help enable that. So I do sit in Sweden in the global office, but my role is not to dictate what innovation might be for the company. It is really to empower all of our countries to look at what is more innovative or what are the challenges that we have in every single country, especially as they're quite different from one another. What is a need or a pain point or what is aspiring to happen in China will be very different than what is needed in, let's say, Sweden or somewhere in Europe. So in order to enable our countries to find the best solutions, we have to give them the right tools, allow them to bring together the right resources, and also to give them the right tools to have that right mindset to foster that innovation.
Thank you, Cindy, for that. And one of the questions that we will ask you later on is, you said the right tools. Would love to be a bit more tangible. What does the right tools mean? It's a big, broad concept. But first, Göran, I know that you are heavily involved in the Swedish strategy for innovation when it comes to AI development. What's your experience when it comes to international collaboration and getting different parties around the table in order to solve problems?
Yeah, I like actually to approach this from an AI view, from my work in AI, and I hope one of the tools Cindy was talking about was AI. Well, I meet a lot of diversity and inclusiveness in my work. This is a necessity not only for innovation, but also to find scarce talent, actually. Many organizations I meet need to bring in new diverse talents, but also to include the experience of their current employees. There are some organizations where everyone gets basic AI training and understanding to distribute the innovation. When I meet executive groups, there are managers from like HR, finance, communication, marketing, sustainability, legal, and these functions are often more diverse compared to tech. And these people make most of the AI decisions, not the tech or IT people. And deploying AI often includes even more innovation than developing AI. I also teach in lifelong learning classes at universities and see brilliant and relevant ideas from many 70+ people. And I meet the same creativeness in high schools. Often they create relevant ideas using AI for sustainability, for example. I think diversity and inclusiveness foster openness and learning and vice versa. I think, for example, the Global Partnership in AI initiated by Canada and France is an excellent platform for sharing knowledge. Also, only last year, several nations made it easier for people to immigrate to take part of the innovative process in their countries. As North America and Asia has taken the lead in developing and deploying AI, we get a lot of visitors here in US from Europe, at least when it's not a pandemic. I always find the atmosphere during these visits extremely open and generous and helpful. As AI often supports new business models, this is also implies the need for innovation and inclusiveness. One example is when larger companies not only require suppliers to be AI ready, but also promote the suppliers to work much closer to be included in the creative processes. I think this is yet another example of inclusiveness that generate innovation. So, well, that's just a few examples on how I think inclusiveness foster innovation, really.
Thank you, Jan, for sharing that. And Joachim, I look at you. What are your reflections when you hear this from a Vinnova perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear how you all discuss different aspects of the innovation ecosystem. And I'm thinking that like every participant in a project like this, or whatever change you're about to address, that you understand your own role and make sure that everyone else also understands your role and you understand their role in order to optimize that you do what you're best at, and you also find the interfaces for collaboration. But also, as Cindy was mentioning, the need of making room for different perspectives. And my take on that was that, yes, a method or a skill is to dare, being courageous, dare to share. It's easy for a white middle-aged male to share his perspectives, right? But being a young girl in Fittja, not as easy. So is that part of your toolbox? How do you make people open up? How do you make people participate in being courageous?
Yeah, I really believe it starts with our leaders, all of us here. We need to set the example of what makes a safe environment. What does that look like, and how does that feel? Oftentimes we have tools, or we have an environment, or we say, this is now a safe environment. But saying it doesn't necessarily make it happen. You need to actually feel that you are safe enough to share anything, no matter how stupid or how silly it might seem, because those ideas tend to lead to the better ideas as others build upon them. So absolutely, it's really not about building an environment. We as leaders should be enabling that. We need to make sure that we ourselves hold that mindset, we have the right skills, and we have on our belts, in our back pocket, the right tools, and are willing to build upon them. There is no right or wrong answer when it comes to innovation. And that's the one thing that I think leaders need to remember, that they also are on a journey of learning.
Which bridges into the question I had for you, Rodney, in terms of the best outcomes and maybe the goal conflicts in that. But also one of the things that we haven't talked directly about, but is obviously implicit in all this. You use the word dare. You need a safe environment. That means in different perspectives we have conflict. And even though it needs to be safe, how do we discuss that in a way? And there's a cultural aspect. I know how Swedes handle conflict. I know how other parts of the world handle conflict, and it's not the same. There's a delta there. Rodney, how do you think about starting to address this?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. That's an excellent question. It is one that, working in government, it's one that we encounter every day. And so you're talking about sort of the complex world of public policy development. And so any government that is, thinking about sort of implementing a new idea will naturally be within a space of competing sort of interests. There is natural sort of conflict there. And I would say, I think a lot of the principles that underlie how best to sort of manage that is, what Cindy has said and sort of others, which is you have to create an environment where you are very clear around the parameters of what you can and cannot do. And so there's an element of sort of honesty and transparency on behalf of the government, so that citizens sort of understand where are the limits of its action. And as you engage in dialogue with citizens, and understanding that you will have special interest groups, you will have sort of the general population, which is often silent in their sort of opinion. And then you will have sort of opposition sort of parties and sort of other groups that will be more vocal, yet sort of more of a minority standpoint. It is taking sort of all of that input, sort of engaging in sort of that honest dialogue. It kind of gets back to that concept that I sort of mentioned earlier that I know has been talked about in one form or another in this conference around shared values, which is sort of saying that ultimately, there is this classic Venn diagram of where we all come together sort of in the center, recognizing that there are going to be parameters outside of that where we don't agree. And so let's sort of work together in that place, sort of in the middle. That is much easier said than done. And so it is an extremely sort of hard process, but is one that is, I would say, fundamental and sort of primordial in sort of achieving sort of whatever objective we're looking to achieve. And I guess I would sort of argue that I think that is probably applicable sort of within the public sector, but also sort of within the private sector too.
As most of the panels throughout this conference, we're listing more questions and challenges than answers, but I think that's also part of the process. Yeah, Johan, if I ask you to come in here, you were saying that how do we use tech and how do we use AI? And obviously one of the things that we want to say in this conference is tech won't solve any of this per se, but it obviously has a key role to play. How do you introduce new technologies in this process in a constructive way?
What I found is that it's very hard for organizations which introduce new tech bottom up, really. Many organizations say we need to test this, we need to build the proof of concepts, we need the tech people to work with this. But I find these organizations moving forward very slowly, actually. When the people I mentioned earlier, like managers within HR, legal, communication, finance, and so on, when they get the basic understanding of what they can do, we gain a lot of things. We gain momentum in developing this, but we also broaden the perspective from the beginning, and we also, maybe most important, we get to do important stuff instead of like testing technology. The technology is tested. We don't need to do that. We need to deploy things. So I think there's many aspects on that.
A tough question there, which I don't think we'll have an answer for today either. But also something that we were alluding to the other days was some of these challenges need different perspectives, and that needs to have maybe a global body around it. That some of these things are too hard to solve on a local level or a national level. And Cindy, you are not a global body, but IKEA is a global organization, so you have some experience in this. How do you work? Is there any learnings that we can take from how you work as a matrix?
It's really about bringing everyone together. And unfortunately, we as IKEA, we are not everywhere in the world. We are in a big part of the world, but hopefully enough where we can bring those perspectives together. That's the really difficult part during this pandemic, is we're not able to be in the same room all together. We're not able to fly everyone from every country into one location to really collaborate and discuss about these broader issues. And that means communication. It's so important now. So grateful to have so many tools, Miro, for example, to collaborate and brainstorm. All of our remote tools like Zoom and Teams. That's really been, I guess, the channel that we've been able to use to bring everyone together. But it is very difficult. And then there's language, and then there's culture and expectations. So for us, it's really about communicating, and even, you might even say, over communicating, in order to ensure that everyone understands what everyone else is saying and what they really mean behind it. What is the emotion behind what they're saying?
What's the emotion behind what they're saying? So the tools are both, more emotions. And the tools are both technical as well as leadership and some sort of EQ and IQ. We have a question from the audience.
San Francisco.
Looks like.
Yes, hello. Can you tell us about the role that international collaborations play in regards to strengthening our democracy in the digital age, and especially in regards to the future of responsible AI development?
Göran, that's for you.
Okay, thank you, Frederick. Nice to see you. I think that's an excellent question. First, as I know you from Mila, I like just to say that probably most people watching this do not know, but last fall, AI Sweden established an office in Montreal, and we already have a close and fruitful cooperation with your organization. We're very thankful for that. Well, I think there are many aspects on AI and democracy, actually. We need to assess how totalitarian regimes use digitalization and AI to control its own people. We need to try to stop this spreading. We also need to stop the use of AI to manipulate elections in democracies. Both of these defensive tasks need a broad collaboration with many nations, I think. But fortunately, as you say, Frederick, AI and digitalization can also be used to strengthen or even enhance democracy. For example, AI is used by local governments to better understand the needs of the citizens. I think Rodney told us a little bit about that. And AI is also an excellent tool to hold governments accountable. Some of us maybe remember the surprise when we first, as consumer, had more information than the salesperson, maybe 15 years ago or so. AI is making the equivalent true, but for the relation between citizens and politicians. We get powerful tools to combine relevant facts, analyze alternatives, and to identify consequences. The same thing can be used to hold big corporations accountable. It was actually used, for example, at the climate conference in Glasgow last year, where companies greenwashing their name was identified by using AI. This was indeed an international collaboration. So all this need to be facilitated by transparency and responsible AI, I think. I hope when more people understand the possibilities and consequences of digitalization and AI, there will be more demand for transparency and, as you say, responsible AI. That is some of my thoughts on the subject of AI and democratization.
Thank you, Frederick. And I think you've now seen firsthand what it means to ask questions in this forum. One just gets more questions, no real answers. But that's part of what we're doing here in this, the collaborative approach. I'd like to thank the panel. Yes. Thank you. We have... I think what can we say the bottom line in terms of collaboration stakeholders? It's important in the international aspect with the cultural, the emotional, and the tools. And the tools are both in terms of leadership as well as AI. And
exactly. And finding the common ground and common values, that's super important, but we have to do it.
And I reference back to Carl Heath's conversation earlier from Rise about the digital channels, and the tonality of the public dialogue also affects this international collaboration. And to highlight what Vinnova is doing, we now have a film that shows how Vinnova, the innovation agency, works with inclusion. So roll the film.
Norms exist in all areas of society and affect the way we humans think and act.
It's therefore not so strange that many of the solutions found today are based on the norms that existed in society when the solutions were developed.
Carrying out analysis from a norm-critical perspective means we see things we would not have seen otherwise. These may be needs that go unfulfilled today,
or entire target groups that are excluded due to the way a product or solution is designed.
Such as skin-coloured plasters that only work for one kind of skin tone,
trams that are not adapted for passengers in wheelchairs, or crash tests that don't take pregnant persons into consideration.
Shortcomings that inhibit both social development and growth, and that we're able to identify as long as we examine them from the right perspective.
This is, for example, what a major hospital did when it discovered that gender norms were one reason why women were facing longer waiting times than men for treatment in accident and emergency.
While another analysis showed that the sports equipment in schools only worked for those children who were the most able-bodied.
These analyses gave rise to new, innovative solutions for gender-equal waiting times for medical treatment at accident and emergency.
And more inclusive physical education. Norm-critical innovation is thus, quite simply, a matter of adopting a systemic approach to finding new insights and innovation potential,
and then transforming these into novel solutions that contribute to inclusive social development and sustainable growth. For further information, visit our website
www.vinnova.se.
Input and precursor to the next speaker. But I just have to say, Joachim, I've been impressed by you and your colleagues. There's so many smart, interesting people doing important stuff, and none of it is easy.
None of it is easy, but you can imagine how fun it is to go to work every day.
I can imagine. I now, with an audience, send in my application. Pick me to be part of this. And Sofia Ivarsson, I'm sure, will be of the same caliber. And we'll learn more about Vinnova's tools and methods for norm-critical analysis and inclusive solutions in a project called NOVA. Sofia Ivarsson, you are Program Director for Gender and Diversity for Innovation at Vinnova. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And then I have a presentation to go along with my speech. Do you have it somewhere? Yes, perfect. Thank you. So how can we create more inclusive innovation, as you discussed in the previous panel? Our point of departure is that a sustainable societal development cannot be reached if we don't strive for inclusion. And in order to take a democratic and participatory approach in the governance of innovation, it is very important to consider whose needs are met by the innovation. So we have to start by asking this question: who benefits from the innovation? Who participate in the innovation process or system, and who decides on the priorities and the innovation outcome. So these are all parts of questions that we have to start by asking ourselves to promote inclusive innovation. But then, as you said, it's very hard, it's a difficult endeavor, and you need some kind of support to do this. it might be difficult or even impossible to include everyone and every perspective in the innovation process. So you have to have some kind of tool to support you in the innovation process. So at Vinnova, now next slide, I have this. I see if it works with my own clicker. If otherwise, you might need to help me to go to the next slide. Great. So at Vinnova, we have created this innovative formula for this. It's called the norm critical and norm creative innovation. So we focus on norms. And norms and values, they normally function as necessary principles and support for our social interactions. And we usually take them for granted, and they don't cause us any problems. But as illustrated in this film that you saw, sometimes they do lead to discrimination. And the norm critical analysis on the left side is about pointing out and becoming aware of such discrimination, and to examine and analyze how this affects your products, technical solution, built environments, and social relations. So next slide, please. A norm critical perspective means looking beyond your own view of the world to help us realize a much greater potential in the innovation process. Next slide, please. The norm creative phase, on the other hand, on the right side, is about, from these critical analysis, creating new solutions that are inclusive. And it also challenges the notion that an innovation, an idea, occurs in the mind of just one individual. Norm creative innovation is first and foremost a social process in which the new idea occurs between people, based on the group's evolved understanding of complex social contexts. And everyone could and should contribute. Next slide, please. With an inclusive perspective in the innovation process, you are encouraged to try your idea with different kind of solutions, or we call them tactics. For example, the sledgehammer. There, you might see something. The sledgehammer is about opposing social norms that exclude. And with the sledgehammer, you can try to see how your idea turns out with that tactic. Or you can try the camouflage net. It's about outsmarting social norms with the camouflage net. But as you see, we have at least 10 other kind of tactics. And I also heard in the panel discussion that about courage and about conflict. How do we handle conflict? And to help us handle conflict or bring about conflict in the innovation process, we have the joker. And the joker is something that you should work with if you find that suddenly the innovation process is much too comfortable. There are nobody opposing, or we are all agree on the problem and the solution. Then you have the joker to challenge your comfort zones. So next slide, please. The tool that we have created, Nova, it contains, as I try to show you here now, concrete methods designed to assist those seeking to achieve norm creative, inclusive solutions. And this material is based on practical experience and research that we have gathered from different projects and studies. And the format chosen, it's a deck of cards. It's to promote creativity and collaboration. And the focus is on norms that discriminate, although the content can be useful in all innovation-related contexts. After all innovation is about challenging norms. Then we also have a collaboration with the Stanford University. Next slide, please. And the Gendered Innovation Platform, they have developed another tool, intersectional design cards. And these cards are designed to help teams explore and develop intersectional design solutions, both to identify new markets and also business opportunities. And they have very good examples in their toolkit that give you an idea how different intersecting factors, for example, disability, gender, age, ethnicity, may result in different challenges and needs that you have to consider when you develop your product or service. And both NOVA and the intersectional design cards, next slide, please. They are in these forms, the toolkits, but you can also find them as digital tools, and you can find them at the Vinnova website. And I do encourage you to try them out, and you can try them in any kind of innovation process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophia. Great seeing you here. See you at work tomorrow, I guess. But I need to ask you, well, first of all, I can just, the first time I ran into this Nova was before joining Vinnova. We used it at a hackathon down in Lund with Venture Lab, I think. It's great using it as during the weekend and using it as a tool, just as you mentioned. So I can just, yes, it works. But what, moving forward, what do you see, what will happen, what do you want out from the innovation ecosystem next? What's the next frontier for them to conquer?
Well, I think that if you look at the innovation system historically, it has been very much about technical solution and emerging technologies. It's still important and interesting, but what I do see for the future is the need to work with social innovation and innovation that take people's need into consideration. More than working from the part of what the technical development can bring you. The technical development might be seen as rather a means to support people's needs, but that's what I would like to see. And because of the historical tradition in the innovation system, we have seen when we have looked at the innovation system that is very male dominated, for example, if you bring in a gender perspective. So it means that we lose a lot of innovation potential when we don't address all social groups in society that can bring new fantastic ideas that haven't been part of the innovation system. So yes, I would say that more inclusive innovations and innovations that have as point of departure the social needs of people.
Derek, thank you very much for your contribution and adding the extra layer of the norm critic to the innovation discussion that we've had today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're moving on to a panel about social innovation by startups, looking at the ones that are walking the walk, talking the talk. How can startups build sustainable companies within the area of social innovation? We're going to meet 3 Swedish startups that are walking the talk. Welcome. Let's start with a quick overview about what the problem you're looking to solve in your business. Sofia Andersson, CEO and founder of Schwung, Petronella Gustafsson, CEO and founder of Progress Me, and Paula de Sosa, co-founder and lead developer of Imagilabs. Sofia, let's start with you. What's the problem that you guys are solving?
So first of all, just starting off saying hi and good to be here with all of you. And our main client is the public sector, and we help them solve societal challenges and thereby also reducing big cost by including more people into society and creating methods for doing so.
We met your, I've understood it correctly, right? You are in Blekinge.
True, you met probably Erika before today.
We met some of your tribe on Monday, and it seems like it's an ambitious group of people in Blekinge solving the big challenges of our time. So whoop whoop to Blekinge in general. Petronella, over to you. Progress Me, what's the problem that you're solving?
Okay, so hi, nice to meet everybody. I am sitting in Stockholm at the moment. I have been having a little bit of problem with my technology, but I hope it's going to be fine. So we are focusing on teenagers with eating disorder problems, with a focus on different kind of exercises based on cognitive behavior therapy in the digital platform. So we're also not only focusing on just the person who are sick, but also like the supporter, people who are related to someone with an eating disorder.
Thank you for that. And Paula, last but not least, tell us about Imagilabs.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm one of the co-founders and also the lead developer at Imagilabs, and we're an edtech gaming company targeting 300 million preteen girls worldwide with the goal of encouraging them to start coding. We think there's a lack of diversity in tech, and we're trying to address this. And so we have a mobile app through which girls can learn how to code on their own and also share their skills with others in our community.
Thank you. And now that we know what you guys are doing, let's lift the conversation and in general talk about social impact in terms of the startup point of view. Because we all know that building a company is a lot of work, tears involved, and we pretend when we look at successful superstar entrepreneurs that it was some sort of straight linear journey from idea to company, and that's never the case. And you've built a business with the added layer of complexity that you're also aiming for impact of sorts. So I was wondering if you could all share some of your experiences in this ecosystem to allow us to maybe solve some of those problems. And Joachim is here taking notes here, also how Vinnova can be a contributing factor. Sofia, let's start with you.
So that's true that there is another challenge to be a startup within this sector, and for that we are forever grateful for Vinnova, because we got granted 2020 we got granted funding from Vinnova to develop our business, and that's so appreciated because leading the way is kind of a bit lonely. I mean, we're trying to challenge the system, the governmental system and the public sector in the way that they work with social challenges. And that's a tough quest to do, because a lot of the public sector is not today used working with other sectors or non-profit organizations like us, for example. And that creates a frustration gap, I'd say. So they know that this is something they need to focus on, but they don't know how, because they don't have any processes and strategies for working together with other actors in these questions. So we see a lot of challenges, but also, for example, what COVID brought us was one of our most valuable insights. Also, that relationships are so important, and we got to really build a lot of new relationships since this digital opportunity came across. So that's also actually something we're grateful for in some cases.
Before we listen to the other experiences, I'm going to let you represent some sort of the incumbent here in the institutions and the government side that you were referring to, Sofia. Like, what do you think when you hear that? So you've obviously funded and you've supported them, but there is this barrier, and we've been talking about it all day, like how does this change work? How can you make this easier?
Yeah, of course. I mean, money is always like the first answer. We need more money, we need more funding, and the creating sustainable business models is, of course, a challenge within this area. And I know, for instance, social impact bonds as a solution. Could that be something that leverages or bridges over from the governmental funding to going for more private funding? What's your take on that?
Yes, I believe so. And in order for that to happen, we need more examples to look at. We need more like Hässelby, Vällingby to look at and get inspired and get brave from, to get some courage from, because it's so unusual for the public sector to work in that way. But what they also need to do, I think, in the public sector is to plan for social innovation, because what we often meet is exactly what you say: we don't have any money, because they haven't, on a political level, planned for the social innovation. So that needs to be done several years ahead, and that needs strategy as well.
On your to-do list. But Petronella, from your point of view, what type of experiences have you had that we could add to this playbook, if you want, of how to better build sustainable development companies?
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel that we should work with like small healthcare providers a little bit more and take them together with different kind of startups that are focused on digitalization, because I feel like a lot of healthcare providers, they want to do all the systems and everything themselves. But I feel that people like us, we have been going through the whole journey ourselves. For example, I have been having an eating disorder for over 5 years. I have been going through the whole healthcare system myself and been seeing like how we are working with that and how we can make better solutions. So I think that is something that we should bring up more and be a little bit more open for new solutions.
One of the things that we were talking about yesterday we were talking about preventive health and well-being. And one of our talks from Mats Börjesson was about how we need to use physical exercise in the healthcare system.
Exactly.
And obviously it's intuitively correct and everyone understands it, but he was saying one of the challenges is that it's not enough, the doctors needed more evidence. So one of the building blocks was an intellectual argument. I need more proof before I do what I actually intuitively know is right. And this just makes the whole thing so much slower, that we need years of research to do what we know is right. Again.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I mean, like, yeah, sorry, like,
no, go ahead.
So excited. Yeah, but like, I mean, if you are going through a problem yourself and you're going from like, okay, take me for an example. I have been having my eating disorder and I have been going through so many different kind of methods. And then I have been building up a whole system together with evidence and together with Sahlgrenska, for example, to make a product of it. Then I think that like, let the healthcare providers focus on what they are good at and let the small companies with evidence and together with Sahlgrenska and different kind of methods work on that, so that we can just build something together and make new things that can be bigger than what we already have.
And this specific problem is that it's too slow to work with old methods in order to gain that knowledge and create the evidence needed. So we need to disrupt that. We need to totally rethink how we do that, work more with how do we get the data from all our variables and break down the silos and create new policies that makes it possible to use that data instead of just redoing what we... It's too slow.
Yeah, it's too slow. Yeah, Paula, adding you into here to this. Petra, 1 second. We'll add Paula and your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, I guess we're more linked with the educational sector. So we have this app, but we've also been working with a lot of schools and private schools mostly. But we would love if it was possible to more easily work with public schools. I think there's a lot of innovation done by a lot of educational startups, and there's sort of this missing bridge in between the public school system and the tools that we're trying to build. And in our case, we're trying to build a tool that is more inclusive. And we've seen with workshops and classrooms that we've been in so far that we are actually able to get a lot of girls really interested in coding, which teachers aren't seeing with other coding tools they're using. So it would be amazing if we would be able to reach even more students throughout public schools in the Swedish system.
But again, this is so slow. It's not a secret that the most common profession in Sweden is a programmer.
No.
But it still creates this aha moment for a lot of people in the establishment. Oh, really? I thought it was blah, blah, blah.
So going back to the finding the acupuncture points, where does it hurt? Where do we really make a change? What kind of button do we have to press to address this? Because you are approaching this in an interesting way, and this will absolutely break down silos and create a change. But from your perspective, what's the acupuncture point? Me not being into this specific theme, what do you think is necessary to change?
I mean, I think we went as far as reaching out to the Ministry of Education to ask for more information on their coding and computer science curriculums. And we were just told that they're not able to provide us with any insights on that.
Ask again.
And we think just more access and more transparency would be amazing for startups.
Go, ask again.
Yeah.
B. And I think, I don't know if you heard this morning, but Joachim's colleague Andreas Netz was talking about system demonstrators. And I don't know if that's really what you mean by the word, but it's also the people that are system demonstrators that goes out and doesn't wait for the system, but builds and shows and uses technology and tools to have an impact. So a big whoop whoop to all three of you, partly for what you're doing, but also contributing to the playbook for the next generation and cohorts that will follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And on this, we have another Gapminder question to re-educate us or educate us on something around the globe.
Okay.
And hopefully you know the answer. In low-income countries across the world, I feel like a teacher. In low-income countries across the world, what share of girls went to school until at least age 11, pre-pandemic? The options are 20%, 40%, or 60%.
So being on the positive side here, 60.
60% is correct, and you and our audience knew that.
Oh.
Almost 50% of all of us have answered yes, 50%. More girls go to school. I'm going to state an obvious question here. Joachim, why is it important that more girls go to school?
We need diversity. I mean, we don't need more white middle-aged men telling everyone what to do. We need all the perspectives here, and having, as we saw in the urban movement and the Her Initiative movie as well, that was really moving, emotional to see that girl talking about seeing her vision of her public space being realized in front of her eyes. Her own ideas was visualized, and that's what we need, because the young people they have the answers.
And isn't it so, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I think Bill Gates was talking about it, that focusing on education and women's education and girls' education might be have the biggest impact on the climate transition.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. For so many different factors within this complex issue. There we go. There's a lot to learn, and thankfully more girls are going to school. But as we were discussing before, there's still a gap, and there's a lot more to do in order to reach the next level. And now we've come to one of my favorite parts of this conference. Every day we meet two of the startups that are contributing to the matchmaking that's happening behind the scenes, tomorrow's solutions. And basically 90 corporates are meeting companies all around. I think it's 470 meetings that have happened so far, addressing real problems. And Ignite, who's creating this matchmaking, are following up all the meetings, and we know from previous conferences that this is a very useful way to solve real problems and meet potential clients, funding, etc., all of those challenges that we have been talking about. So I would like to welcome the German startup Denkweit and the Swedish startup Warpin Media and learn a bit more about what you guys are doing. Welcome, Dominic and Emma.
Hi. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi, Dominic, you are the CEO of Denkweit, and Emma Ridderstad, you're the co-founder and CEO of Warpin Media. Yeah. Ladies first in the name of quality and inclusion. Emma, tell us, what are you doing and what are you building?
Well, hi, it's very nice to be here. Warpin is a virtual and augmented reality company. It's based in Stockholm. We are 17 people and we do all the development in-house. We were one of the first developers for Magic Leap in Europe. So we do build a lot of brand engaging AR, but our main focus is training in virtual reality. So we have built a software platform in virtual reality that works as a framework for your education, which makes it easy to scale and very cost efficient. So you can save up to 80% of your training cost, learn 4 times faster, and have a retention of over 75%. So we help our clients with everything from manuscript production, implementation, and distribution. And we have seen amazing results with our clients. And we are now ready to scale in the enterprise metaverse. So this has been amazing these days.
And Emma, stating the obvious here, but one of the things that Joachim does in his day job is create future scenarios to help educate both policy, etc. Have you thought about, or do you use VR and AR to create your future scenarios?
Actually, we've been reading so many applications. We had a funding call here last year for the pandemic transition into make it a sustainable transition, and there were so many VR applications coming in. We couldn't fund them all, but there's quite some interesting applications there. No, we have not yet done that at Vinnova. It's really interesting, especially, and I appreciate you mentioning metaverse. We haven't, that buzzword hasn't been mentioned today yet.
No, but we've had a buzzword bingo, so we don't need all of the buzzwords in this conference.
But that's a really interesting perspective, using VR technology in order to make people feel, experience, create emotions through VR.
Because as you might have heard, Emma, in order to create the systemic change that we need, technology alone isn't enough. We need innovation in the organization, in policy, etc. And the emotional aspect of that obviously moves people quicker. And Joachim and I haven't really landed in if we should be constructive and positive or fear and sense of urgency. I think we need to create a smorgasbord there.
Yes.
Thank you, Emma. Dominic, tell us, Denkweit, what are you building?
So we are a spin-off out of the Fraunhofer Society, and our goal is to perfect vision AI technologies for the industry. So to bring this complex technology very easy accessible. And what we have done, we put all the AI technologies and quite a lot of own developments together and put it into, we call this a Vision AI Hub. And there you can simply upload several images, click what you want, and our strength is that you need only several minutes, 15 images, quite less. And then you can simply generate a vision AI technology which finds objects again or finds defects, whatever you want to have. And we are working very diverse. So you can use our technology in all different systems like drones, automation, platforms, whatever. So, and we do see us as a technology enabler here. So we have this puzzle piece which you need to analyze images or analyze video streams in all different cases.
Fascinating. And how is Sweden Innovation Days useful for you? What are you hoping to achieve in this matchmaking?
We do search clearly for customers, but mainly also for partners to also improve our technology. We also think about AR technologies, by the way. So to push this together with this. Sweden has a quite good industry, quite good companies in part of production automation, but also in camera technologies. So I had a short call with Teledyne, which is one of the biggest thermography camera producers in the world. So that's good.
Fingers crossed. Thank you, Emma and Dominic, for sharing. Thank you for contributing, and hopefully the matchmaking will be one part of your next chapter in your journey. We look forward to hearing about your successes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The matchmaking process is so much fun to be part of. I used to be on that side of the table, and it's so fun.
And it's also, it sounds easy, let's just matchmake, but it's really important when you address real issues and real challenges, and then you curate, so you allow the right people to meet the right people. In Sweden, we are spoiled by the fact that we have relatively flat hierarchies, which means that you can call or email someone in the corporate that you want to talk to. But in many parts of the world, there's so many gatekeepers. Yeah. So to meet the right person is hard.
And when you get there, then it comes the other obstacles, legal, interfaces, stuff like that. It's so we really need to lower the barriers for collaboration.
Because it's one of those annoying one-liners I hear a lot from corporates. I never meet startups, not realizing that in their own organization they have so many gatekeepers and barriers for those conversations. And what happens is the venture space where I work, it's also a theater where startups are on stage, they get 3 minutes, and there's this made-up gong, you can't speak for longer than that. And it creates a hierarchy where the corporates or the capital seems like the more powerful part of the equation.
Yeah.
Whilst it's very much a partnership, we're not going to build without this collaboration. So I think a lot of that theater needs to go.
And we also need to understand the both parties' perspectives and differences. For instance, pace, tempo. When the startups come running, wanting to collaborate and let's do it, we're ready to go right now. Yeah. It's not like this week or this month, it's right now. While the corporates are like, yeah, let's talk next month.
Or in 18 months, and that could be the life and death of a startup. So many challenges, but we're glad to hear that the matchmaking is going well. And now comes your highlight that you've been looking forward to since 2 o'clock. If we're talking about innovation, we're talking about future. This is about future-proofing innovation and getting the youth's perspective on that. Pernilla Beralt, who's the Executive Director of UNICEF Sweden. Thomas Davin, the Director of UNICEF Global Office of Innovation. Please share with us the youth perspective and put us all these in our box.
Thank you very much, and thank you moderators for keeping the energy level so high here at the end of the day. So I'm so happy to be with my quite new colleague in Stockholm, Thomas Davin, since the UNICEF Office of Innovation recently landed in this fantastic ecosystem of innovators like you talked about. So I will start and then hand over to Thomas. So first of all, like you've been saying, if we are to succeed in meeting the development goals, if we are to succeed to reach the rights of every child, we need to create a much more inclusive innovation process. and we need to co-create. Otherwise, we are missing 2.2 billion human beings on the planet. We have 2.2 billion children on the planet, and they have the right to participate. And they are facing enormous challenges already before the pandemic, but it has gotten even worse now. And what better partner we believe to work with than with UNICEF, who has the General Assembly, the United Nations General Assembly, and all the governments' mandate to work on children, to drive the process of change for children globally. We exist in 190 countries. We focus on saving lives, on development for children, but also really to making sure that every child can develop to their full potential. And we need to partner up if we are to succeed our mission. This is in our DNA. We work with partners, with governments, with business, with civil society, and with children. And right now, let me just say a few words on the main challenges right now, because like you talked about, we're talking a lot about education. We've been talking about digitalization in this conference. And it's very important to know that 2/3 of the world's children did not have a possibility to continue their learning when the school closed. 92% of the world's children have been affected by school closures. And very often that in itself is a fact that we didn't listen to children, we didn't make a child rights assessment of the decisions that we took. And look what it has placed us. Some of us, the adults, will have consequences for a long time, but for many of the world's children, it is a consequence for life to have a disruptive education process. Another key factor is that the increase of poverty levels, that has also in itself meant that we have an increase in child marriage, we have an increase in children's labor. So now or never, we need to step up on the participation of children so that their voices are heard. It is a right, but it is also the smart thing to do. It is a way to future-proof our decisions. Like you said, we have people who are living now, but they're going to be around for hopefully 60 or 70 years more. And with you all listening, we want to join up, we want to partner up. And what better moment now that we have the UNICEF Office of Innovation in Sweden and in Stockholm. And very much thanks to all of you in this Swedish ecosystem of innovators, both private, public, civil society. Let's do what we can to join up. And with these words, I'd like to hand over to my dear colleague, Tuma, who will tell you more about what is the Office of Innovation, what do they do, and how can we contribute, and also give you some very concrete examples of how we work with children.
Thank you, Pernilla. And I was reminded of the words of the moderator saying that in the VC world, you have 3 minutes. I understand I now have 3 minutes. Let's see how well I would have done in the VC world and try to give you a sense. So first off, when I meet people here in Sweden, I hear quite often, so what are you doing here? I thought that the UNICEF headquarters was in New York, and that is correct. The UNICEF headquarters is in New York, but we have moved all of my division, the division responsible for the innovation function in UNICEF, here in Stockholm. Why, you could ask? The reason is quite simple, and it comes back to some of the figures that Pernilla mentioned. If you look at 2020, we were losing about 40,000 children under 5 every day of preventable causes. 800 women die every day from pregnancy-related complications. 58 million children of primary school age are out of school, and over 200 million adolescents are out of school today in the world. Those are mind-boggling numbers. They're also numbers that are telling us that if we don't do something about this, if we don't innovate better, faster, we are going to miss out on the ambition we gave ourselves as a world community to give every child an equal opportunity, an equal chance in life and a bright future. And so us coming here in Stockholm has a simple focus for us is to look for other partners, to look for new ecosystem that we could resonate with, that we could partner with, that we could co-create solutions with, to give these children in the various sectors that we work in a better chance to leverage the reach that UNICEF offers in these 190 countries with the kind of innovative spirit, mindset, knowledge, expertise that we've heard over the last few days exist right here in Sweden, and to try to really bridge the two and make those count and matter for children. Now, we are doing some of that. When we think of innovation ourselves, we always think about not just innovating for children, but innovating with children. And let me give you maybe a few really quick examples of that. One is a program that we call Upshift. Upshift is very simple. It's focused towards 10 to 24 years old children. It's talking to them, asking them about their ideas for their future, responding to their problem, and giving them a chance to really tell us and bring solutions that we have not thought of, that are quite often cost effective and are quite often sustainable. We are doing this. It's a human-centered design, and it's really connecting with communities of children that quite often don't have a space, don't have voice, and it's giving them skills and the space and the self-confidence to imagine the solutions that they would like to see in the future. We so far reaching about 42 countries, 2.2 million children have benefited from that. And we're working across countries, some of which are now saying that is how we now want to build through schools, integrating Upshift into our own schooling system, so that we define the innovating spirit and mindset and skills of the future. And those will be our innovators. Those will be the next moderators in the equivalent of the Sweden Innovating Days in different countries. And that is happening in India, in Vietnam, in Kosovo, in so many countries around the world. And they are coming up with radically different ideas, some of them not so radical, but for them, those are children who've never had a voice. They're inventing things that are getting, international prizes. They're looking at using some very simple things, such as fertilizer bags in India, to create tools for agriculture that are actually more cost efficient than the commercial products existing on the market. They're looking at vertical wall garden to lower pollution in Kosovo. They're doing all kinds of new innovation, and again, getting so much prizes. More importantly, though, getting a sense that they have a voice, that they have a space, and that their ideas matter and can influence their own future. And they're suddenly discovering all kinds of entrepreneurial spirit and skills that are going to define their space in the future. Another example, very quickly, I know I'm running out of time, is talking about what we are doing right now in Kazakhstan, which is really talking to young girls, generally in schools or out of school, and focusing our energy into telling them, okay, there's simple ways for you to actually build satellites. And when you go to Kazakhstan and you start talking to young girls and saying, you can build satellite, they'll look at you like you're crazy. And yet we have defined very simple models, very focused models that are focused on, some elements of mathematics, but we are resolving that for them and giving them the sense that with a simple curriculum, they can do it themselves. And we are now launching a series of nano satellites with these young women. We are changing their lives, not because we're doing this with them, but because through that, we're demonstrating to them and to their communities that these young girls, many of whom have to fight their own families to keep staying in schools, that suddenly they can create jobs, that they can create skills that will give them jobs in the future, that will create value add to their communities. And that is really what we're here for. That's what we're here. We can get your help to join us in ideating, in co-creation, some other bold ideas, some other ideas that are really getting us into a stage where we reinvent how we do innovation together and how we do innovation with new partners, with new ecosystem, and with these young peoples first and foremost. Join us.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And again, as many of the talks today, it's both frustrating and energizing. And even though I'm impressed with all the work that you're doing, I need to go back to the startling numbers that you started with. And they obviously dwarf some of the horrific numbers we talk about when we talk about COVID. What are your thoughts around why these challenges towards children doesn't mobilize the same type of activities as, for example, the pandemic has? What do we need to do to move it further?
If I may start, I think one important factor is the fact that they are under 18 and they are not voters. So we have to think very creatively, how do we give them a voice? With social media and the children who have a connection with the internet, it is possible. But I also think that a lot of adults who haven't realized, like Thomas and myself and our colleagues, the actual incredible value, in addition to the right, the value of, let's say, a product development or of your business to take their ideas and knowledge into account. They are the future customers and the future clients. So there are so many reasons. It's hard to understand why we don't, in fact.
Going to you, Joachim, I know several of the system demonstrators and the projects that you're doing, you've had children as part of the participants in the participatory approach that you have. And again, if I channel my inner cynic, have you seen that people think that that's a cute thing to do? Or this is really important, just as Pernilla's saying?
The definition of being an idiot is that you do the same thing over and over and again, and you end up with the same result. Don't ask the normal suspects what to do, because they don't know. We don't know. We need to ask the children, because they have new perspectives, they have new ideas, and so it's absolutely not a cute thing. It's a necessary thing. And I think you coming to Sweden is a gift that we need to nurture, and really looking forward to collaborating in this, because it's so important. And we also discussed earlier today, why is innovation needed, and why are we in a hurry? But who's the target group? Although I'm looking forward to seeing the next century, that will be fun. The real target group for making actual change, that's the kids. And that really motivates me. So looking forward to making a real change together with you guys.
Thank you for ending the day on behalf of all our children. Thank you for your work.
Thank you for having us, and looking forward to coming together.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to see you soon.
And Joachim, it is almost 5. Again.
Wow. Where did those 3 hours go?
Yes.
Bye.
And what have we discussed today? We talked about system demonstrators. We talked about the government's alignment and dedication to the fossil-free welfare state, and how inclusion, diversity, and co-creation is a core element in that. We've had the children's perspective. We talked about the norm-critical aspect of that.
Yeah.
How the democratic dialogue and the digital realm also needs to be a part of this, because none of this is in a vacuum.
The future of democracy is super important aspect of all of this.
You work with this, so hopefully this has been a day of inspiration for you, and your to-do list, when you go back to the office tomorrow, has grown. Where do you want to start?
Well, although we have diversity as it's like integrated in everything we do at Vinnova, we can never do too much. Diversity is a powerful tool in making sure that we find the new solutions that we need so much. So just make sure that we do have it on the top of our agenda. Diversity, having multiple perspectives in there, finding out which target group did we miss this time, and address that. That is super
when I hear
important.
you speak, I realize that you need to have a huge dollop of humility, because it's constantly questioning what you're doing and adding new perspectives that are challenging what you think, how you've done it, and then creating a process where you go out and challenge what people have done and how they do it. In a way that still gets them on board as part of the transition, and not a finger-pointing exercise.
Yeah, I like to quote Institute for the Future, who says that working with strategic foresight and creating these scenarios, that this is the future, or this is the future, or this is the future, and they equally have to be like really believing in those scenarios. But it's also important to be humble and say that, okay, well, your perspective was actually even better. So strong opinions, lightly held. That's the quote.
Whew. Thank you for that. Thank you for today. We have more coming. So at 5:10, you'll see a fireside chat with Stina Lantz from the Swedish Incubators and Science Parks. There are continuously side events going on. At 7 p.m. CET, Vinnova Silicon Valley will be talking about electrification. 3 days down, 1 to go. Join us again tomorrow with the Swedish Energy Agency. We're going to talk about energy, urbanizations, and cities. I will be here on the main stage from 2 p.m. Thank you.
Take care.